All right, Chapter 7, Hazards Connected with Petroleum Fuels. Military Standardization Handbook, Petroleum Operation Military Handbook 201. Sorry, I was one page ahead of it. Or a couple pages ahead of it. Chapter 7, Hazards Connected with Petroleum Fuels. General. Principal hazards with the preventive associated with the petroleum fuels related equipment are discussed briefly herein. It is essential that personnel handle of the product will become familiar with these hazards or safety aspects. Section 1, Hygienic and Health Aspects. Fuel. Contact of the fuel with the skin should be avoided, although such contact may not be immediately irritating and harmful. Such contact of the fuel occur with the affected area should be cleaned with the promptly. Most fuels, oil must be wiped off with a dry rag and the remainder removed with liberally application of soap and warm water. Under no circumstances should gasoline or solvent be used. Get fuel oil in the mouth or nose must be avoided. A medical area shall be securely immediately if these conditions occur. Oil vapors may make toxic through the far below the explosive limit. Men should not be permitted to work in spaces with a hydrocarbon vapor concentration of 500 parts per million by volume unless they are protected with an air-supplied respirator. The recommendation of the permitted to work only with a ventilated space wherever the hydrocarbon vapors are at or below permissible levels, where work must be done with the atmosphere lower explosive limit, but permits safety with a safe breathing. Men must wear a supplied respirator, work in tank compartments, pumps, etc. shall be done only under expert supervision. Alright, 7.3 Diesel. Diesel fuel is not especially irritating to the skin, but unnecessary contact should be avoided. It should be kept off of the mouth and eyes and nose, but is not violently poisonous. Contact with the open cuts may prove irritating with the conditions that occur with the procedure followed. The fuel oil described in paragraph 72 should be followed. The described vapor and toxic there. This diesel fuel vapor is toxic. Therefore, some of the same precautions regarding men working in space with a hydrocarbon vapor concentration exceeds 500 parts per million of the tanks, compartments, and sumps, etc. equally to diesel fuel. 7.4 Kerosene. Although kerosene may not be completely irritating, harmful, the skin contact should be avoided. Should contact occur with the affected area, should be cleaned properly with liberal application of soap with warm water. Contact the eyes of the cutting of is irritating. If this occurs, the procedure described in the fuel oil, paragraph 72, should be followed. Getting kerosene into the mouth should be avoided. They recommend with the medical and be secured immediately. If any is swallowed, kerosene vapor, toxic. Same precautions regarding the a man in space with a hydrocarbon vapor exceeding 500 parts per million, compartments, sumps, etc. Describing burner fuel oils apply equally to kerosene. Hazard connection with the handling becomes kerosene, similar to those of number 1 burner fuel oil. R75 gasoline. These concentration of the gasoline vapors, which can be tolerated by men far below is required to produce combustible explosive mixture of the air within 1/10 of the amount necessary to support the combustion or to form explosive mixture within the harmful inhaled for more than one short time, cause dizziness, nausea, headache. Large amounts acts of the anesthetic and may cause unconsciousness. Or occurrence of any of these symptoms mentioned above among men with the handling gasoline or who are within area which gasoline is handled with the spill should be taken in warning of the presence of the dangerous amount of the gasoline vapor in the air. All exposed personnel must be sent out of the area until the vapors have been cleaned. Recovery earlier system usually prompt after removal of fresh air. If men have been overcome, they should be given the first aid immediately at once. Medical attention should be detained, with the first aid consists of the removal of gasoline from the skin of the clothing heavily contained with the fall of the other accidents. The prevention of the chilling of the application of artificial respiration of breathing has ceased. Lead poisoning is not to be feared with the inhalation of soap vapors. Lead traded gasoline gives off from open containers. However, the hazard exposure for the vapor of tetraethyl lead may occur where the work is carried on regular over a period of weeks or months in an enclosed and adequate ventilated area with the gasoline spilled frequently with a considerable quantity. Filling of the drum with the small cans of lead-treated gasoline closed in space prevents potential serious problem with exposure to the vapor of the gasoline lead. The danger of entering a tank that has been used for storage gasoline may vary because of the change with exposure to the toxic concentration in gasoline vapors, as well as dangerous quality of the lead vapors in air in the sludge and wet dry with the bottom of the such tanks. No person shall be permitted to enter a tank without special equipment and complete instruction for the use. The same general precautions regarding men working space and hydrocarbon vapors exceeding 500 parts per million in tanks, compartments, some supply to gasoline. Gasoline is exceedingly irritating when swallowed. Gasoline should be swallowed. Vomiting should be induced. Medical attention must be obtained as soon as possible. Gasoline will cause severe burns if it is allowed to remain in contact with the skin, particularly with the contact maintained under soak. Clothing or gloves, clothing and shoes through which gasoline has been soaked have been removed. Should be removed at once. Repeated contact with the gasoline removed the protective oil with the skin, producing dry, roughening, chapping, and cracking. Skin affliction may follow with the damage to the skin. Severe irritation of the skin develop and may begin usually on hands, perhaps exceeding the other parts of the body. The effects upon the skin are due to the gasoline not so small amount of the lead has been put in heat-treated gasoline. As soon as possible, but after contact with the gasoline should remove the skin, preferably by washing the soap with a water rag, waste wet. Gasoline must not be put in the pocket and must be disposed of at once. Soaked clothing must be kept away from the flame and the sparks, and should be washed thoroughly with the soap and water as possible. If gasoline come into contact, they should be washed with liberal amounts of tapped water. Medical attention should be obtained promptly. Alright, 7.6, jet fuels. Jet fuels does not contain tetraethyl lead, however, they may contain more toxic aromatics with the aviation gasoline. They should therefore be handled with the same health precautions apply to leaded gasoline. Should they not be used for the cleaning of the purposes, and the same precautions with respect to handling leaded gasoline apply equally to handling jet fuels. The precautions include all aspects, in particular applicable to the inhalation vapors, skin irritation, container hazards. Gasoline container trucks or even gasoline pipelines will not be used for the storage transportation other than petroleum products, except for the basis of the specific orders of special importance possible with such equipment with the transportation of the drinking water. If an emergency, it should be necessary to transport drinking water by means of the work of have been treated with a suitable method of removal of the gasoline and lead. Specific instruction for the purpose contained with the corpus of an engineer, water purification, training methods of the following precautions, however, particularly applicable to drum filling, drum reconditioning procedures, spillage, gasoline, if jet fuel cannot be prevented under this existing condition. To a lesser extent, workmen cannot be devoid of the contact with the product, remain free of the exposure to the toxic vapors. Following precautions should be taken. Clothing and shoes should be used by personnel during the filling operation should be kept clean and suitable for regular use. Facility and personnel washing, bathing, and changing of the clothing in specified intervals should be provided. Such facilities should be good circumstances that permits is not a discharge of their use. Personnel should not be permitted to work on for long periods of safe under the exposure of the vapor, the gasoline, tetraethyl. They may require interrupted periods of work. In general, avoidance of the acute toxic effects with exposure to high concentration gasoline, necessity with a brief period of exposure followed by a corresponding, perhaps somewhat larger period of freedom of exposure. Medical supervision personnel should be provided at least to the extent of the performance of the following surface selection. Personnel free of the well-defined organic grease. Organic disease of the central nervous system, kidneys, blood vessels, and blood. Examination care of the consideration person complaining illness who may actually develop the illness associated with the work. In addition, with all personnel frequently engaged in gasoline filling operation, body contact with the gasoline unavoidable should be examined thoroughly with a component of the physician, possibly lead absorption at least semi-annually. Filled drums must be carefully handled to prevent damage of the injury. Personnel handling with the foul drum should be trained and supervised and ensure carefully safe handling transit with the storage location when loading into the truck, barges, or freight cars. 7.8 safety precautions in cleaning tanks. So anyone who enters the tank and contained with the leaded gasoline should wear a hose mask with the blower type through the supplied air supplied under positive pressure. He should continue to wear the equipment until all the material which may give the lead vapors have been removed. The lead gasoline tank should be cleaned under the department technical supervision. Alright, Section 2, Fire Prevention Extinguishment. General, fire prevention for the fire extinguishment, specialized subject for the tree with extensively other handbooks, manuals, sections. Section contained with a brief outline of the type of the fires that most likely to occur with the oil depots, flammable the nature of the product with being stored and handled with a possible source of ignition. Fire prevention is one of the most important items to be considered with a military fuel depot. Operating personnel shall exercise every possible precaution, especially during fuel handling operation, before protection of the life and safeguarding valuable products, government property, and equipment by human failure is responsible for major fire that occur with such personnel should be well trained and made aware of the potential hazards. Alright, your fuel oil. Because of the relatively high flash point of the boiler, fuel oils are not flammable to ordinary temperature. They may be readily ignited in a mix with low flash point product with the gasoline, kerosene, solvent, etc., which products are present with the serious fire that may result with the fuel oil stored at temperature below the flash point is vapor, and the most combustible nature is too dilated with the ignite, the burn, and in other words, the vapor air mixture with the tank fuel oil at the temperature sufficient under the flash point with the lower limited explosibility. Difference of the temperature of about 15 degrees Fahrenheit under the flash point will usually provide the needed safety, but the factor of the degree of safety depends on the composition of the oil, whether or not it has been contaminated. A small amount of the volatile material of the burner fuel oils are not volatile enough. The ambient temperature is usually encountered in storage to be ignited, burned, unless contaminated with a more volatile product. However, if they are heated above the fire point, they can be ignited readily with the support of the fast-growing hot fire that may be difficult to extinguish. The number 1 and number 2 fuel spread rapidly with either land or water, burn completely, where number 5 and number 6 fuel oil may go out of its own accord. Alright, diesel fuel. Diesel fuel is not volatile enough. The ambient temperatures encountered for the storage of the ignited, burn, and left contaminated with more volatile product. However, they are heated with the temperatures above the fire points. They can be readily ignited with the support of fast-growing hot fire that may be difficult to extinguish with these fuels. If the repeated spread rapidly with either the land or water burn with completely where it's heavier fuel with the oil fire that goes out of its own accord. A sprayed diesel fuel from the line break of the leak may be quite easily ignited by any flame or contact with exposed hot exhaust manifold. Kerosene, the hazard connected with the handling kerosene are similar to the number 1 burner oil fuel. Gasoline, the atmosphere of the gasoline storage tank with the mixture of the air and gasoline vapor. The exposure mixture is roughly not less than 1% of the gasoline vapor to 99% of the air in volume, not more than 8% of the gasoline vapor to 92% of the air volume in general. The operator must realize this, that all gasolines will give the off vapors inconspicuous amounts any temperature likely to encounter. Even in the Arctic, those vapors may be from flammable and explosive mixtures within the air. When the motor or the gasoline when motor gasolines are stored in tank with the otherwise closed containers, so the sea level pressure liquid surface temperatures above 20 degrees Fahrenheit, vapor above the liquid in the tanks probably too rich for the support of combustion, but the may burn at gauge opening of the vent will become diluted outside of the air with a liquid surface temperature between 20 degrees Fahrenheit plus and negative 70 degrees Fahrenheit. A flammable vapor air mixture will probably be present in the space of the tank above the liquid level. Alright, vapors from the gasoline spill will be extremely dangerous for the under certain condition of the gasoline vapor. It will burn freely without explosion ignited. A fire in the near containment of the gasoline having the restricted opening of the generator with enough heat with the vaporized gasoline to rapidly with explosion to occur with the inside of the container. The vapor thus is generated issue with the opening of the high velocity to burn. It mixes the air with the opening of the however the opening of the too small with the vapor pressure may be built with the rupture of the container. Gasoline vapor is heavier than air. The high percentage of the vapor in the air will be found in lower levels. However, the vapor will gradually spread to become diffused. It may travel along with the current of the air in considerable distance, then may be ignited with a flash, resulting in travel back to the source of the supply, causing the explosion of the fire some distance from the spark, flame, or other source of ignition. Due to difficulty avoiding small leaks, these always have danger vapor ignition with the sparks of the open flames. The area with the gasoline store with the handle with the accumulation of the gasoline vapors must be prevented and usually accomplished with the proper ventilation and mechanically natural proper maintenance storage facility. Gasoline should never be permitted to enter any drain line, sewer, not specifically provided to handle petroleum product in a safe manner. Alright, for aviation gasoline, read vapor pressure at 100 degrees Fahrenheit will vary between 5.5 and 7 pounds per square inch compared to 6.0 and 14.0 pounds per square inch for the motor fuels. Aviation gas is flammable liquid but not quite volatile with regular motor fuel. With the same precaution, however, with regard to atmospheric gasoline tanks apply equally well to aviation gasoline as to motor fuels, except for the flammable vapor. The mixture will probably present in an aviation gasoline tank. It is in the space above the liquid. Fuel liquid surface temperature is between positive 25 degrees and negative 40, positive 25 degrees and 40 degrees Fahrenheit. Jet fuels. All grades of jet fuels are flammable liquid. The tendency of these fuels to vaporize varies according to the grade, due to the possible change of the grade of the jet fuel with the storage of the tankage allocated to jet fuel storage in the ship tank. The same general precautions should be taken with the handling of all the grades of jet fuel, with the general precautions with regard to the flammable aviation gasoline, vapor air mixture, and tank supply. Even with the jet fuels may not be as volatile as aviation gas or motor fuels. Grade JP4 read vapor pressure is between 2.5 and 2 and 3 psi. Although petroleum fuels are hazardous, they therefore require careful handling. Observe the safety rules preventing explosion and fires. Grade JP4 become the lower vapor pressure required with additional precaution in the handling. Grade JP4 explodes vapors in the normal storage handling temperature. Regardless of this effect, with the JP4 grade is considered no different than any other petroleum fuel. In one respect, it still requires source of ignition, which is difficult to control. The amount of the change with the increase of the linear rate of the fuel flow, and the accumulation is greater than the higher specific gravity of the boiling range of the jet fuel. Reciprocating engine fuels, static charge is developed and tendency to leak away from them rapidly with a properly ground pipeline. However, there is free surface in the cone groove tank, and the changes tend to accumulate on the surface of the small tank up to 15 foot in diameter. Leakage from the wall generally keeps the uncharge of the building up. With the large tank at the dangerous level may form likely an explosion result of the accumulated charge arcing across liquid surface, igniting the vapors. Usually large surface of the air is more shallow in the tank, greater than possibility. Accumulated charge minimize generation accumulation of static electrical charge of JP4 fuel. Following precautions and procedures recommendations when such do not interfere with the other or hamper the assigned military mission of the activity. 1. The use of the overhead fill lines which permit the free fall of the product through the air should be minimized to eliminate the practice. 2. The entrance of the air into the fill line should be minimized to eliminate practicable. 3. Pumping and mixture of the water and fuel and or maintenance of the water bottoms in the tank should be minimized, eliminated with the practice when necessary. The use of water bottoms inlet connection should be kept sufficiently above the water to minimize the aggregation. Water that is entrained with the air of the rising of the fuel tends to generate accumulation of static electrical charge. The bursting of the bubble the surface provides a mechanism of the depositing static charge on the surface of the fuel. The rate of the flow. The pumping rate at level below 6 feet of the tank should be reduced below 3 feet per second. It is, if practical, also considered desirable to reduce the rate of flow when the level of the tank is approaching top, reduce the risk of a flash over the roof members. When available, the floating roof tank for the preferred with the JP grade 4 of the storage tank issuing the tank eliminated the vapor space, also provide the ready path of the dissipating static charge at level. However, the same precautions as are outlined above should be observed. The floating roof lift clearly of the legs of practical storage. JP4 with the tank constructed with the concrete. Other poor electrical conducting materials should be avoided. All tank linings associated equipment should be properly grounded and bounding electrically according with approved methods, even though the outside of the source of the ignition generally eliminated effectively to strict adherence to style of safety precautions established emphasized in the case. Grade JP4 and ignition gauge hatching events with include filler next to the aircraft tank or cell that have traveled with the tank and cause violent combustion and explosion. JP5 would be found to have a vapor pressure close to 0 psi, since it does not have definite tendency to vaporize with the more volatile grades. The vapor air mixture in the tanks and containers above the liquid surface will probably be too lean to be ignited, but the liquid surface reaches a temperature of 140 degrees. All right, 711. Static electricity. The generation of static electricity. This must be made with the static generation example of the separation trailing edge of the tire from a roadway from the rolling steam, the containing condensated with the static spark of the gap between the pipe and another conductor, a different potential. This is for the reason of the bonding of the pipe to the container into which the product is falling to keep the pipe and container in the same potential, whereas the static charge will be generated with specific turbulence at one product faster than the other. Has not determined it's not, however, the rate of normal bleed off the influence greater by the degree of the conductivity of the product. The conductivity of the product is increased by its water impurity content. This is the reason no experience with the static accumulation of the surface of crude product sufficient to cover the vapor explosion crude product tank. Bonding and grounding of the piping of the tank of the shell tank of the will minimize the effect of the production of the static electrical charge. The product of the surface of the tank, lessening the difference of the potential of these charges. Shell tank and other structures allow the bonding of the grounding of the will prevent the receiving the vessel to become the change for the no purpose of the prevention of the grounding generation static charge of the surface of the product, the reduction rate of the accumulation, preventing production ignition spark of the surface of the product of the shell tank and other structures. Alright, B, the prevention of static electricity. To reduce the hazard of the static electricity, unfilling the first filling, the empty tank with the gas vapor free, only with a small stream of the 1/4 to 1/5 of the maximum rate of flow should be allowed with the end of the tank. The rate of flow is held until there is a heel of the tank of liquid level at least 3 to 4 feet above the inlet level. The jet fuel of the gasoline cargo is usually stored at the partially filled tank first. The valve on any of the empty tank with the cracked open to permit the liquid level of the build gradually with the gasoline to issue the small craft through an opening hole of the nozzle electrical bond required between the nozzle of the tank into which the product is delivered. The primary electrostatic bond, the absolute requirement of the prevention static ignition of the jet fuels flowing through the pipes. Same precautions are to be used with the JP3 and JP4 as for gasoline. However, the case of the filling of the tank of the truck and other such containers, the JP4, the greater possibility of the vapors being an explosive range during the container. Therefore, more emphasis should be placed on the proper bonding between the fill spots and container. The filling tank valves, tank vehicles of the JP4, the fill system stem should be constantly in contact with the bottom of the compartment if at all possible. Alright, 712, petroleum fires. Military fuel described in Chapter 2 with the flammable liquid fuel, jet fuels, and gasoline's more volatile liquids easily vapor with a combustible atmosphere with extreme Arctic temperatures. Less volatile fuels, however, do not easily vaporize, require safe handling as they will burn freely after ignition. Type of the fire. Some type of the fires can be conversely occur, but they should be guarded against the fuel depot, brush, and grass fires at site, possibly with a complicated oil leak of the burning vapor at a tank. Fire at a tanker car rack or at truck loading, unloading rack. The fire at a pier of wharf, wet hole, manhole, fire at the tank, fire at leak at the break in the pipe in the dock, hose, tank, and the fouling of the partial destruction of the tank roof, pump house, manifold, fire, manifold, miscellaneous example, electrical fire, files and quarters, files as a result of the enemy action. Alright, fire designation. Fire is a fuel depot is usually designated either by pier fire, shore fire. The primary consideration given these fires described in the following paragraphs. Pier fires. When the fire occurs with the pier, with the concern with the ship officers will be to move the ship with the shore personnel will assist the releasing of the vessel, immediately shut off any of the flow of the product of the pier line that may be fed to the fire. But only after the flow of the product has been stopped can the effect of the extinguishment be attained. Oil leaks and spill potential fire have the closed surface elements must be given the piping system located in the under of the pier. Your shore fires are normally be the type listed above the first step of the taken with a whoosh. When shore fires occur with the involved with the flow of the fuel, such line breaks and hose failures to cut off the supply of the product with the involved is practical. Failure fires due to the vapor leak with a minor production product spill should be extinguished at the time they start when the personal train with the proper immediate with the use of the first aid and fire appearance. Alright, 713, fire prevention. Fire prevention accomplishes you with the proper construction elimination of the foreseeable exposure of the possible equipment. The failure of it as well with the establishment, maintenance of the safe operating procedure, proper maintenance of the equipment, and good housekeeping, providing with the proper first aid, fire appliances, and first aid extinguisher equipment. Agents and sufficient to put out fires that may occur. To implement above the individual responsible for fire protection should issue the instruction conduct fire drills, periodic inspection. Your fire inspection. The periodic fire inspection should not be confused with the special inspection conducted by the district fire marshal of the fire protection and engineer, military personnel. Inspection should include, but not limited to, the following: extinguishers to be examined to ensure that they are fully charged, properly placed, with protected, ready for use, available, the number, the type of the required. Fire water system included with the hydrant, stands, and pipes, drain, etc. shall be tested with adequate protection against freezing or physical injury. Fire hose coupling should be examined to ensure that they meet the necessary requirements for the availability of the quantity of the pressure adaptability of the extinguishing firefighter water auxiliary apparatus that may be called in the event with a large fire. Examine all electrical equipment on the ground with the bonds of cathodic protection, report condition that may be provided with the source of ignition. Note the condition of the adequacy of the dikes around the tankage where needed. Dikes of the drains should be closed and except during the supervised drains. Pump house shall be examined to make sure that there are no product leaks and spill, with the evidence of the poor housekeeping further than adequate protection against the potential source of ignition. Proper ventilation, the most important safety measures. The plant tank farm shall be inspected to ensure that the adequate steps have been taken to eliminate potential hazards with the dry grass, the weeds, and have been cut and remove the dikes and tank areas. Alright, examine area of the vicinity of the boiler, plans for heating of the installation, other locations where the open flames may be used with the possible source of flammable vapors. Release. Alright, see that no smoking signs are posted within proper location. Rules that are being observed. See that the automatic fire door of the windows are maintained with a reliable operating condition from the obstruction. See the rules covering the permits of the hot work, including the cutting and the welding, etc. Are observed. See pipelines, valves, etc. marked within the corners of the military standard 101 and 161 are applicable. Special instruction for the fire department that they should be coupled with the pre-provided safety guidance, supervision, all capable of the flammable liquids are spilled, but they should be established cleanup procedures and established vapor hazards within line limits area boundaries given the consideration prevailing direction and wind direction, velocity, and other atmospheric conditions. Safe distance stipulated with the except of the military depots should be generally exceeded with a reply with the commercial installation, especially with advanced base for the airfields where operations definitely different with the more hazard for the normal commercial operations. Add additional factors and safety necessary for the protect against the more likely occurrence of the spills and overflows of the constitute the largest source of the vapor release expected. Fire drill. The commanding officer visualizing in certain circumstances emergency condition for the direct the fire chief to plan with the drill to meet the situation. Fire drills should be conducted not only with the ensure that men can handle the firefighting and plan with the equipment, they will understand the proper application for the use, and easier training with the conditions assumed that the drill should be fully explained with the firefighting crew with the regular operative prior to the drill. The drills or practices fires will be held during the daylight hours until the men are fully trained. Then they should be held either by day or night without prior notice to the men. With the regular operators shall be included with these drills, and you should know the locations of the proper valve to close the pumps, and they be shut down to meet the assumed condition, even though the actual operation may have to be simulated. Alright, 714 safety fuel handling operation. Produce power with a violation of the petroleum fuel with the vapor as rapidly with the burn rapidly with the necessary of the characteristics. Also, to make these fuel dangerous materials, it must be handled with a great caution. 5 gallons per gasoline have been potential destructive power equivalent to 415 pounds of dynamite with the military air base that has thousands of the gallons of such fuel are handled daily with a potential handling fire handling hazard as are evident. Safety instruction regarding the fire's accident with the directive of the two objects of the prevention of the first aid of the extinguishment with the major objective of always the prevention for the much easier with the much more better to prevent than extinguish one, much better to prevent accident with the give of the first aid someone injured with the respect of the safe working pressure for the valve of the flanges. Fittings pipe within containers must be recognized with the operation restricted accordingly. Or 715, fire and explosion prevention. The mentioned volatile petroleum fuels are flammable liquids. They will vaporize normal atmospheric temperature of the vapor will burn with readily with ignite with these fuel vapors to burn with explode. These elements must be present in the air. The fuel, air, oxygen, and heat. And 3 must be present at the same time to play with the product produce a fire. Any one of these elements missing with the fire will not occur to the operating personnel. Must remember that any of the operation for the performance 2 of the elements of the air and fuel are present. The only other element is heat. If the heat and the spark are under such condition, explosion and fire will result. Fuel handling personnel will have no no control over the air present in the most of the operation, which, with the exception of the preventing spill, with very little control over the generation of flammable vapors. Therefore, chief attention preventing the fires must be given to eliminating all possible sources of ignition that are many of the potential ignition sources by one of the most likely present for the drawing, defueling, and refueling operations. Spark generator with static electricity, operating aircraft engines, operating automotive, their internal combustion engines, arcing electrical means, circuits, opening flame, and energy, operating high-frequency radar equipment mounted on the aircraft. Alright, static electricity has been the source of ignition for the many of the petroleum fires. One of the reasons for the many of the people who do not understand what static electricity is, how it may be generated. One of the most common examples of static electricity occurs with the getting out of the automobile. After sliding across the seat, the static charge is discharged, the touch of the metal part of the aluminum automobile. The experience that occurs at night with the spark might be seen, and it's stamped with the door with the touch of the spark with the same type of can be provided with the source of heat with ignite the fuel vapors. Static electricity may also be generated with the ignition, agitation, petroleum liquid machinery moving the vehicle of the personnel. Protection against these ignition sources is obtained with the dispatching static charge of the proper connection for the ground before they build up sufficiently the danger of the discharge static charges before vapors released into the air. Illustrate the last case for the refueler ground filled nozzling touch metal vehicle before the refueler is open in the specific condition to avoid static electricity ignition source listed in another paragraph. The operation aircraft engine, the automobile engine, other internal combustion engine that provide source of ignition for the vapor that occur by the arcing of the distributed parts of the arcing spark plug of the engine, exhausting pipe of the burning of the glowing carbon particle with the exhausting pipe of the backing of the fire, backfiring and other spark caused with electrical currents and other common source of ignition fuel handling operators heat with the case of the spark and such as make cars, battery terminals are connected with the electrical switch if the operator with the example of spark electrical currents arcing generator brushes. Arcing with a welding machine brush with arcing the brush of electrical motor tools and other sparks which occur within short circuits. Alright, open flames are light and obvious ignition sources similar to the hazard to open flame with the standard electrical light bulb with the flash bulb should any of these bulbs break with a filament would they be hot enough to ignite with the vapor, make sure cause the fire explosion or other precautions there are. Personnel should wear non-static producing clothing such as cotton, nylon, wool, and silk, or certain plastics should not be worn. Keep all ground and cleaning connections cleaning and unpainted in good condition. Never begin any fuel handling operation until all the equipment is properly ground and bonded. Do not use a Chasmos filter during fuels. Chasmos filters increase the danger of static electricity. Never smoke within 100 feet of a refueling operation. Do not permit using open fires, matches, cigarette lighters, lanterns, similar opening flames within 100 feet of fuel handling. Never perform any of the repair work during the fuel handling operation while hazard. Do not use flashlights, drop lights, extension cords, except for the proof of the use of the hazard location. Do not carry and strike anywhere matches, cigarette lights, lighters in pockets. To disconnect fuel handling operation from the approach of the electrical storm. Be certain that no heater, welding torches, blow torches are being used within 100 feet of the fuel handling operation. Alright, be certain that no internal combustion engine that are being operated with 100 feet of fuel operation with the only exemption of the engine necessary to the refueling with the defueling operation, which are specially equipped with the spark arrestor, with the flame arrestor, and the safety equipment. Keep the gauge tight with the contact with the gauge hazard during the gauge operation. During loading and unloading, tank and cargo of the care should be moved in the air that can be accomplished using the approved signal devices, positive mechanical blocking device installed with the rails. Alright, keep all the equipment and work area with a clean, orderly, with a good mechanical condition. This is very important to be certain that the filling of firefighting equipment with extinguishers are in good condition, readily available. To never use gasoline for cleaning floors, automobile parts, clothing, rags, or etc. Never wash hands in fuel. After using, place in oil, water, only oily waste and rags itself, closing metal containers, empty containers frequently. Immediately remove the article of the clothing with shoes which have become soaked with fuel. That should be done in this area free of the ignition. 716. Extinguishing petroleum fire. The providing fire protection failure for the issuing the operational instruction should be the responsible district fire officers. The following information is served with the guide with the personnel regularly attached to the firefighting department. Alright, water and water fog. Water alone can only extinguish an oil fire when applied with a favorable circumstances. Solid water streams, water sprays, and water fog all have their proper application. The decision on when, where, and how to apply water should be made only by the fire chief. Blankets. Blankets are mainly effective with the prompt extinguishment of the burning clothing, and the personnel should be reserved for personal use, and occasionally with if wet, they can be used to help smother a fire with a vapor leak or a vent. Foam is applied with the petroleum fire's continuous mass of the very small bubble in the inert gas for the held together with a swift tension of the foam may be of chemical type of the mechanical air foam type. The foam must be applied with a manner with the rate of which will cover the collectible blanket of fire of the liquid petroleum product or without expected fire proceeding if the application spread over the burning surface at a faster rate than rate which it can be destroyed by heat of fire. The correct rate of the application varies with the type of the foam, the type of the burning product, the type of the foaming discharge outlet. Approximately 1 gallon of water in foam and 10 square feet of the liquid surface about 1.25 inch thickness of the chemical. Low expansion air foam per minute over the surface is usually efficient to fight the gasoline fire pools and tanks within roof and when roof is off. Approximately 1 inch thickness of the foam per minute and should suffice in the case of the heavy fuel oils depending on length of the pre-burn performed before application is made. Shorter than time for re-burn, quicker than extinguishment. Extinguishing effective foam applied with the only to fuel oils. When a high volume of flow rate of fuel is available, it should be fuel utilized with applying when several points simultaneously have each of the flow stream that shall be sufficient size of the effective eye itself. It should be directed to slide on one by smoothly directed to the surface of the burning liquid as far as the local structure and wind direction will permit prompt competitive general application of the fuel of foam are most effective. First aid and fire application. The following general rules should be observed with the connection of all the fire extinguisher applying with the knowledge of their operation, proper application, proper maintenance, recharging immediately after use, examining, testing as prescribed intervals. Carbon dioxide extinguisher. For the carbon dioxide extinguisher liquid, carbon dioxide has a under high pressure extinguisher made with both disc valves and seat valves. While the disc valve type is pierced, the entire content of the cylinder is released. The seat valve type have the control valve with a permitted any desired amount of gas discharge with the valve with the closed and remainder of the gas cave. In the future use of the stream shall be directed to the base of the flames. Type of extinguisher may be used in fire involved in electrical supplement of electrical fires. Use soda acid extinguisher. The chemical solution soda acid contained the solution of water, sodium bicarbonate, separate bottle. The amount of the sulfuric acid chemicals mixed with inverting the extinguisher gas pressure and created with the container with expel of the stream of the reacted chemical solution, mostly water, through the hose. This type of extinguisher should not be used in electrical fires. Fatal shock to user may result. Alright, your dry chemical extinguisher. The dry chemical extinguisher contained with the chemically processed bicarbonate soda with the dry powered with the discharge mean with the stored air with gas pressures to contain either inside or outside of the extinguisher shell. And applying with the power to the flammable liquid, the fire of the stream should be so directed in the near section of the burning air of the extinguisher, extinguish first, then gradually move forward with which discharge of the nozzle being moved from side to side with the type of the extinguisher may be used in electrical fires. 717. Safety precaution. Loading of jet fuel and kerosene. Potential evidence inherent with the handling of the jet fuel and kerosene dictate the necessity of the personnel safety precautions and loading of these products with the lead tanker barge of the discharge product with the storage facility. Preliminary investigation of the industry of the Bureau of Mines attributed the special hazards of the handling of the particular products of the accumulation, discharge, static electricity, which is turn effect of the rate of flow of the distillate, turbulence, pressure of the water, and turbulent distillate distillated. To minimize the potential contamination with water, with the vessel pipeline should be drained and cargo tanks equipped with the particular prior to loading the recognized for all traces of water will not be removed. Shipping operation does not exceed loading rates excess of 3 feet per second and 100,000 barrels per hour for the 12-inch line. Through the loading lines, if the tank has been discharged outlet have been covered a minimum of 3 feet product. Therefore, normal loading rate may be resumed under these conditions. T2 tanker fuel can load no more than 30 hours. Loading the rate per second implied with the flow of each of the tank. Total loading rate will not exceed the sum of the allowable rates of the individual tanks field. filled. If it is evident that the turbulence or splashing of the product in the tank with the discharge outlet is covered by the specified 3 feet of the product, a reduced loading rate should be continued until turbulence ceases. Ullage water surrounding temperatures and samples will not be taken any of the tank until 20 minutes after the tank has been topped off or flow in the tank has been ceased. The restriction will require the change established inspection procedure if in fact the initial loading operation has been pumped approximately 5,000 barrels in one tank, preferably at the sample immediately when the sample was being checked, loaded on other tanks, proceed with the necessary failure to one tank with preferably all to be completely filled with between at least 20 minutes elapsed prior to sampling. Meantime, loading of the other tank may be received with the discretion of the local cognizant inspector. Ensure the terminal loading connections are grounded and to the ship, and this ground is interpreted with the gasket and other non-conductive barriers. Alright, 718, safety precautions in heating and waste oil. In heating waste oil, separate water of the oil temperature should be kept below boiling point of the water. Water should be boiled to create the very serious problem with the tank overfill. Under some circumstances, the even temperature is low of the boiling point of the water may be harmful. Therefore, after the satisfactory reduction and emulsion of the may be arranged, the heating should not be carried further. At temperature over 140 degrees, the oil may be also above its flash point and contaminated with the low boil point. Producers will give off flammable vapors at much lower temperatures. It should be retreated with the same precautions as gasoline. Chapter 8, Conservation of Petroleum Products.